thanks so much for joining. I am super psyched to sit down today with Mike Rizzo, CEO of MarketingOps.com. And we're going to be taking a very specific lens into the power and impact that your speaker network can have, but from the role that marketing operations can play in helping maximize your efforts, as well as create some more connective fabric and tissue between the events team and the broader marketing organization. This is for sure to be a rich, deep conversation. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of everything you are all doing, and I was honored to be asked to come talk shop about this. Be a nerd
Awesome.
again.
This will be fun. We'll all put on our marketing ops hats. Let's kick it off. I think, Mike, as we get started, I think the place that I would love to start is we have a hypothesis here at Session Board, and I want to spend some time just pressure testing this against you. And whether you agree, disagree, if there's a middle ground, let's explore all elements in the sandbox together. But we have a point of view that speakers are the experts with the experience that have the authority and trust in market to deliver not only amazing content from stage and within other experiences at your event, but as content generators for your broader marketing efforts. And when you think about, especially in the dawn and now in the age of AI, Google, like what Google cares about is they have a framework called EAT, and it stands for expertise, experience, authority, and trust. And they're looking at content that has all of those elements within that framework.
Mhm.
And it's our perspective that speakers are actually this untapped, incredible resource that live within event teams that are siloed off from the rest of the marketing organization and even a broader go-to-market ecosystem that isn't being fully leveraged by companies. And
Mhm.
so we're curious, I think, as a starting point from a marketing ops perspective, Mike, what do you think of this theory? And I think I'm also interested in kind of the follow-up is like, how can marketing ops help us better understand how to make this theory more actionable? So yeah, I'm just curious, like
Yeah,
first reactions. What do you think?
yeah, lots of head nodding coming from me on this side. I think there's so many things I want to say right now. Like about 1,000 things popped through my head as you were talking. So first and foremost, at MarketingOps.com, we're a community-led organization, which means ultimately I would like to be the megaphone to amplify those experts that are in our community and make sure that they can be seen for just how incredibly talented they are. Um, and they're sharing, whether it's like in our community on a day-to-day basis or on our blog or on our podcast or now at our event, their expertise, right? They're going out and
Hmm.
saying, here's the art of the possible when it comes to your go-to-market motion and integrating all of the various tools and data layers to help enable go-to-market tech stacks. So this EAT framework, the idea that your speakers are this untapped resource, I 1,000% agree with. And our product is today is the ability for us to share knowledge with the broader ecosystem and with each other inside of the community. And the only way to do that is to find the folks that want to share that information with the world. And I think what's really interesting, I'll try to dovetail between a couple things that you just asked. Um, this AI first world we're headed into, and this idea that you need to be seen as an authority with expertise in order to get ranked and all that
Hmm.
stuff. It makes a lot of sense. And I'm definitely not the thought leader on this. I'm totally borrowing right now from what I've been seeing from Rand Fishkin, originally one of the founders of Moz, the SEO, SEM kind of company. Rand has been doing these wonderful whiteboard sessions lately, and it's just like he's pulling apart this research, and the long and the short of what Rand was talking about is uh, in a really weird twist of events, and I think he's right about this. PR, effectively, your ability to get placed, your brand or your speaker or your customer or what have you, the more places they show up and the more consistent they are in sharing the message that you want them to share, whether that's your internal employees, your CEO, or your speakers broadly, whoever it is that is the expert that is out there sharing content, the more it shows up in more places, the more that EAT framework is going to go, you are an authority, you are an expert. And so it's really coming back to your point, Brian, around this idea of your go-to-market motion. You might be missing a really key unlock. Like, use those experts and help them get featured in podcasts and YouTube channels and webinars and at live events and all of those things, because these AI models are going to start to look for the correlation between Brian is an expert at X and Mike is an expert at Y, because they are showing up consistently in all these places sharing their content. And so it's this like fascinating, we're all in this like AI, things are easier to create kind of mode, but the way to get found and discovered and have a better and more consistent go-to-market motion is going to go back to just like the basics of just pull in the right experts, help them go out in the market and talk and share their knowledge. And it's like you're missing the boat if you're not trying to pull in these experts and use that as a part of your actual like marketing strategy.
I think no, it's great, because I think the other thread to pull on here is for teams that are creating content, maybe not like fully leaning on AI 100%, but you're using it to help you move faster and just like leverage your productivity. But the thing that AI agents are doing is they are scraping and pulling all information that is already in existence. So AI created content is regurgitated from something that already exists.
Yeah.
And the connection I'm making here to speakers and to event content is what the Google web scrapers are looking for is originality, fresh ideas, new perspectives. And so as the volume of AI created content continues to exponentially expand, the way that you stand out is with differentiation and fresh ideas. And what are you trying to do at your event year over year with your speakers? You're trying to bring fresh ideas, groundbreaking perspectives, like new research, new data. And so all of this is happening from stage, and it's exactly what your company needs to stand out in this crowded AI space.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And I think, I'll beat on the drum a little bit. As a community-led organization, Mopsapalooza is our flagship conference, and we let it's run a bit like an unconference in that we have our speakers submit to speak, and then our ticketed attendees vote for the sessions to make sure that they get to see what they want out of that. And I think just that's a thing that's just not done enough. Like a lot of the conferences that are out there run more often than not by larger sort of software companies, at least in the B2B SaaS space, and a handful of industry events. They tend to just pull in the people that are going to effectively pitch slap you to try to get you to buy a software feature or service. And I think that's not the way forward with this stuff. Like, the trickle down effect of hosting a great event that educates your would-be customers in the future or your current customers on the art of the possible is the way that you're actually going to build trust and authority and then go grow your customer base more consistently. And to start pulling this down into the marketing ops hat that I have to wear on a regular basis, at the end of the day, if you're an event planner looking to tap into, like, it's up to you to figure out how to tap into your speakers. And if you want to stick with the customer speaker angle, like, that's totally fine. just try to get them to provide value. Don't pitch the software as much, please. That's my ask. But beyond that, I think the way in which you can work with your marketing operations team, there's, I think often there's a miss in the opportunity to connect these two teams together. And so I would encourage all of you as event planners to really sit down with your marketing operations professional and just talk through strategic go-to-market motions, because it all comes down to data, right? And we in marketing operations literally have to build the instrumentation and the foundational layer to capture information in the CRM, right? The customer relationship management platform, right? The marketing automation platform, the map, also houses a ton of data. Your speaker database is really, at the end of the day, it's a data set of who speaks on what and is an expert. And then if you do it right, who's really good at this, right? Who gets high ratings. And so I would say I get to wear both hats. I'm the event planner and the marketing ops guy. And it's a bit of the cobbler's children situation. We don't have it perfect, but we do aspire to capture information about, okay, here's the general topics that these folks like to talk about. So I can differentiate my database of my effectively my speaker CRM. I can differentiate who's an expert in what area. And as I get them to come to my events and I ask my attendees for feedback about their session, and then broadly feedback about the sessions and the topics categories, there's a hierarchy and a structure to organize that information that your marketing operations professional can absolutely enable you to do. And you don't have to worry about it so much. You just have to talk about, here's what I want to be able to do. I want to execute an awesome event with awesome speakers, and I need to know who is awesome at the end of the day, every time. And then your marketing ops person says, great, I understand. What defines awesome for you? Let's talk about the data that you want to capture. What would be interesting? How do you want to capture that? Is it survey data? Is it, all of these things? They're going to build that instrumentation for you to be able to have a better engagement in the future and then continue to iterate and improve.
I love this. And I should have said this at the beginning, but the quick side note that I want to make just from my own personal experience is I'm so biased towards the power of what happens when you have an amazing marketing ops person on your team. At my last company, I led our marketing motion, and we probably hired our first marketing ops professional like a little too late in the game. But oh my gosh, like she transformed the visibility, comprehension that we had around data and metrics, not just to the entire marketing department, but specifically to what impact events was happening on our whole go-to-market ecosystem. Data enrichment from events, including speakers, attendees, being able to collect data points around like intent and interest from our audience and attendees and how that fueled other components of our team. I'm on the marketing ops soapbox. I just think that it's such a powerful asset for growth. And again, like going back to that like connective fabric and tissue, like I believe I have a personal point of view that, or maybe it's a professional point of view, that I think something that a lot of event teams face are, and we talk about this a lot at Session Board, is how siloed our event teams can be from the broader organization. And the right marketing ops person in the seat actually helps you create bridges across silos. So I just think it's so powerful. So I should have unveiled my bias up front,
but I came later though.
Yeah, but I'm jumping out of my chair because I love that you went right to data and the fabric within a CRM or a speaker CRM. So whether you are using a CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce to manage your speaker base, maybe you're using spreadsheets, right? Maybe you're using a dedicated speaker CRM. But what I'm curious about is, from your lens, I would love to get specific around, I think that there are data points that event teams really care about, and then there's data points that CMOs and chief revenue officers and CEOs care about. What do you think are maybe the event specific, and maybe what are the other data points beyond that you think are really powerful and relevant specifically to speakers? I want to get folks thinking tangibly about what are the data points that I should be tracking that maybe I'm not today.
Yeah, I think we'll start with just the event specific stuff. Obviously, it's a little bit of actually, all of this is a little bit of it depends. But
Yeah.
the, on the event side of things, assuming you are hosting an event that is for purchase and not just for your customers or something like that, analytics around when people register. So there's this like hype cycle journey that you'll see ebb and flow around when people register, what price they pay, and what sort of moves the needle, all those kinds of things. The obviously the attendee, like you see this a lot with webinars too, right? Like the attendee rate versus attrition,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. If you're hosting an event in a hotel, you're going to want to know about your fill rates because usually you got a contract with them and you don't want to leave rooms empty because you're on the hook for nothing at that point, and you got to pay money for empty rooms. Uh, I think looking at some of the analytics around session attendee time, right? Those are
Mm.
like really specific sort of nitty gritty bits of detail, useless in their like one off. Hey, that one session had an average attendee rate of 30 minutes or whatever, but useful in aggregate. And I don't know that enough folks really tap into some of those insights to try to understand whether specific themes keep people engaged for longer or not. I think I think as a part of the whole, it's more interesting than it is just at the micro level, but you have to track it at that like micro session level to be able to get to that sort of aggregate view.
Mhm.
So I think those are all interesting sort of event planner analytics that with the right systems in place, you can do a better job of just like understanding what's going on. If you put in the right, um, call it naming conventions. We're huge fans of naming conventions in marketing operations or just like tagging systems. Then you can understand your speaker database and who's getting the most interest for their sessions, right? Like bookmarking the sessions and all that kind of stuff at a time. As I think about shifting like towards how does that impact the broader go to market motion and how does a marketing operations person build that bridge between your session,
Mhm.
or rather your events team and the rest of the go to market org. Your marketing operations person, if they're aware of, and ideally, actually, hang on, let me pause for a second. Ideally, your events team is hyper aware of the hypothesis or the messaging strategies that you want to put into the market. And they're tasked with like, how do we seed the market and continue to nurture what we want out there? Hopefully those are things that are happening. So let's assume they are. And so you're going to host this event, right? And in theory, let's say at least 40 to 60% of the content is purpose built to try to push your message into the market without pitch slapping people. And you talked about intent, right? Like where my brain went was, yeah, imagine if I knew that Brian had at least 50 connections in his social graph to key accounts that we want to reach. And if I wanted to advise my speaker team about who might be a really good fit to try to push some of our like agenda into the market, I would say, okay, what do we care about? What are the sort of general topics? Oh, look, here's Brian. Brian's got these connections to all these other people in our sphere that we want to sell to or reach or partner with or whatever it is. And so you can then go back to your events team and say, here, I think you might want to bring Brian in. Here's what I understand about your desire to host a great event and our messaging strategy. Here's the data that
Mm.
I have about this. And then the inverse is true, right? Like you get all of your speakers lined up. You got a really good tagging system in place to understand like their expertise and who they are. And if you get them up on the pages and you segment and by pages, I mean the website, right? Like you got featured speakers sections, right? If you set up your infrastructure the right way, you can actually watch and monitor for people who are looking at specific types of speakers and pass that information back to your go-to-market team to say, hey, out of all of this, here's all of our key accounts that are looking at these key speakers. So now let's go trigger a nurture series to say, hey, we saw you were looking at Brian and Sarah and Jane and Jack. We would love to offer you a discounted ticket to come to the event. It seems like you really care about these topics. By the way, here's all these other downloadable resources to help you, enable you on learning more about these before you get to the conference. So,
Amazing.
yeah, there's just, that's where my brain literally went when you said that stuff. And that's not you don't turn it on overnight, right? But it's possible. And you need to work with your marketing operations professional to figure out, how do I stitch that kind of a user journey and experience together? Sorry, my
No,
thought.
I love it because it accomplishes like multiple things at once too, because like an event team in that stage of the event's been launched. We're promoting, we're driving registration, we're selling tickets. We're trying to make sure that we have butts in all the seats at this stage of the
Yeah.
process. And so I think like the leading question that like we started today with is like, how can your speaker network help drive impact to your broader organization? And you've just articulated it in a beautiful way where like we have access to data and analytics, even just through our speaker page and the connected data points on those pages to see where is the most interest, what accounts are looking at what speakers, and we can actually use that to accomplish five things at once. And
Mhm.
one of those things is the event team garners wins because we're driving relevant contextual opportunities to sell more tickets. The sales team is winning because they're adding hyper personalized value into key accounts and they're saying, I care about you. I care about the fact that you're trying to close this gap and solve this challenge in this area. Let me help you get there. And I create a pathway for an experience that is now associated with both your brand and your event, which just makes the sales rep's job easier after the event to sell, right? So, like,
Yeah.
everyone gets to check off wins in this process when you have a system and a setup that allows you to collect the right data and take meaningful action on the data that you're collecting.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And this type of go to market, working with expert speakers and then information that you know about this thing, it's just fun, right? It's way more fun to go to market with your community of peers and experts out there than it is to sit there and just lambast people with your spam messages constantly that just says, buy our product, we're the greatest, or whatever slogan you want to put out there. It's way more interesting and way more fun. And it's like a better together story across the
Yeah.
board. And so, yeah, just keep tapping into the data layer to enable that experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the reminder here too, the thing that comes to mind for me is I think at the end of the day, data actually empowers our ability to be more human with each other. And I think I have an idealistic belief that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but we're all working to try to solve someone else's problems. And if you really care about helping another human being solve their problems, I think that's the story you're trying to tell. And so
Totally.
I just pull my heart out of my chest and lead from that purpose, impact driven place of data empowers us to be more human and to help people, period.
Totally. And I will tell you, there are two very common soft skill, whatever you want to call them, type of traits of your marketing operations professional. And that is, one, they are curious. They're just naturally inquisitive and want to try to solve problems by themselves. And then two, they're like, it's built into so many of the people in this profession to just be helpful. It's like really hard for us not to problem solve or solution in the moment. We have to like, a lot of us have to learn, at least I did. Maybe I don't speak for everybody, but I had to learn how to just shut up. Like, no, and just say, yeah, I'll come back to you. Cause like, I got done explaining to you, Brian, my brain went like 10,000 places when you were talking, but we're just like naturally helpful. And so again, just like pulling on that other thread of like how to connect all these things together. You've got to, if you don't have a marketing operations professional on your team, I would encourage you to ask for budget to go hire a consultant or somebody, or at least go hire someone full time. But they are such an incredible resource and they want to be helpful. You just have to basically ask them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, maybe before we move into some other areas, are there any other it's a broad question, so take it in whichever direction resonates most with you. But are there other systems or processes that you think are essential operationally to bridge the gap between event content and speakers to the broader organization?
Yeah, I don't know. One thing that comes to mind is we think a lot about the tech stack in general and talked a little bit about how like teams are siloed in this space at times. Often that means that your tech stack is fairly siloed as well. With marketing operations professionals at your side, I would say they can absolutely build the connective tissue between different stacks. And I think it's important to always consider whether what you're doing today, if it's like on maybe you got your speaker database in your own CRM somehow, right? HubSpot or Salesforce or a spreadsheet. It's important to really consider when it's the right time to move into using a dedicated environment for this, because there's a lot of value out of a space that's purpose built for enabling a go-to-market motion on speakers. I didn't intend to come. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love Session Board. We're very proud users of the platform. And I will tell you that we went through a natural evolution of, yeah, I'm going to run it in a spreadsheet for quite some time. That's not quite getting me what I need in order to like ingest speakers and properly understand like who's submitting and how many times did they submit and all that other stuff. Like you just really quickly run into a lot of like walls. They're not even hurdles. To break through that wall, you have to figure out a new way to do it. And I have all the skills in the world along with a stack full of other people to go build this in our own sort of custom objects and stuff. But it wasn't built for that, right? Like the CRMs that we have today weren't built for those things. And so I think it's really important to consider when is the right time to engage your team to say, hey, I would like this to be more intertwined into our current go-to-market tech stack. Here's where we deliver events, right? Virtually, whether that's Zoom webinars or whatever. And then here's where we're hosting hybrid events through whether it's Excel events is the platform we use. There's Goldcast, there's Zuddle, there's all these great solutions out in the market. And I want to make sure that information is being passed back into our systems and ask the question, should we be building something that is like native to our current stack, customized, or should we work with something that's like purpose built to help drive some of our outcomes? And so I would encourage people to like really start to consider at what point can I unlock more value by going with something that like has the intent of driving more on this putting the gas pedal down a little harder on that type of go-to-market motion because you have things that are like purpose built for the solution. Does that sort of answer the question? It makes sense. I feel like it's a struggle. People are always like, oh, where do I invest in my technology? And anyway.
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. I think where I'm curious are like maybe if you could expand on maybe some of the detail between coming down to like you mentioned, like if you're in a traditional CRM trying to create your own custom objects and fields to accommodate the data that you need to collect for a speaker. I'm curious, do you have like real tangible examples of some of the walls that you've hit in a traditional CRM? And why
Totally.
having something more purpose-built for speakers let you run faster? I'm just curious of maybe painting the picture a bit more clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you're an event planner and you haven't had a chance to really interact with an object-oriented database before, aka like a CRM or marketing automation platform, there's a natural order to things. And there are limitations that you'll run up against. So you've got a contact record, a person record inside of a CRM. And against that person's record is their first name, their last name, their whatever data points you want to have. And then there's a relationship that they need to have to other things like the company they work for, the products that they purchased from you. These are not underneath their primary record. They're attached to it in some other type of object.
It's like a web.
It's a web. It's 100% a web. Now, when you think about an event in a speaking session, there's a database decision that needs to be made. How do I capture the sessions that they've submitted, right? Do I need that information in my CRM ever for any other purpose other than this one-off event? Because if I don't, I'm going to basically ask my team to go build something that is going to store totally useless information. Or if I think it's important for us to retain that information in some way, because I need to be able to go back to my system at some point in the future and say, hey, I need to find all the speakers who ever submitted a session in and around this subject matter, right? You're quickly running into a situation where what data points do I need to store and in what manner? And when you have to go build that out custom in any CRM, it's not built for that. You have to create a whole new architecture to try to figure out how and where that information is going to be valuable to the events team specifically. And then your natural question as a marketing ops go-to-market architect is going to be, I understand you want to capture this information, but do you think that this could be used in any other way? Right. And they might have ideas on how it might be used just because they're aware of the broader go-to-market motions on demand gen and all that other stuff. But if the answer is, I don't really know, they're going to say, I don't really want to store this information in here because it's going to sort of muck up the database and create a situation where I now have to create actual views where I block people from seeing specific objects. And now you're introducing new complexity into your CRM. So, okay, now I have to be aware that my events team should have visibility into these types of people and these types of records, but the sales team probably shouldn't unless that person actually ends up being a speaker. And then there's this and there's that. It's, oh my God. You know what? It might be better if we just have it in its own environment and it's protected. And then when necessary, we'll push some of the like relevant information back to our CRM to enable the rest of our sales and marketing team to be able to source those people, right? Like I probably don't need to know every single thing
there's
submitted.
5 data points that truly matter for the sales team, the marketing team, the customer success team, the partner team. But the architecture of our dedicated system is mapped specifically to the architecture of how an event team thinks about metrics, data, ROI, et cetera.
Exactly. And so very concretely, if you've got a speaker CRM dedicated setup and you're letting your team run free, it enables them to go faster in a controlled way. And then everybody sits there and does this handshake agreement that says, oh, now that the event is done, here's the 4 things that we need to know in the sales and marketing side of the CRM and the map. It's, were they a speaker? Yes or no? Ever, just purely. And then how many times have they spoken with us? Numerical field, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. What is the average rating of their session? And let that get updated all the time. And then what are the top 3 or 4 or 5, or in fact, what are the topic tags, right? That they've ever spoken on. That's probably it, right? Because at that point, the easy questions that come up that can now have easy answers are, I would like to find anybody who's ever spoken on this subject and has a rating of 3.5 or better. And your marketing team, your customer success team, your sales team is like, great, I know how to go find that information in a CRM because it's stored on their actual contact record. And it's a special flag. I didn't have to do anything custom. It's just a couple of handful of fields that are actually useful fields for us. And the rest of that crazy nonsense, which is actually hyper useful for the events team, that can stay in your dedicated environment, right? So it's not necessarily totally a thing that has to be sent to the CRM. Hopefully that helps people if they're watching this now or later.
No, I think that the way that you articulated that makes a lot of sense. I think that was really helpful. You did just hit on something, which was the post event. I think before we run out of time, I want to make sure that we hit on this because I am curious on, from your perspective, like what are the post event opportunities, whether that's in speaker data, whether that's in repurposing, re-leveraging content captured at an event that can be used on other channels. again, a broad question, but I think I'm mostly curious on where you lean in and get really interested is like, how can marketing ops create more connective tissue after the event to continue to drive ROI from the event long after it's ended? I'm curious, like where you lean in.
Yeah, where my head was going, just as you were asking the question, I'm sure a lot of us have heard of like companies like Gong, and if you're in the events and production world, you've got like Descript and stuff like that.
Yep.
Where I'm going with this is um, unstructured data and using the recordings to understand what it was that they were talking about. If you can post event get to a place where you can aggregate information that's a bit unstructured in a new way that says, oh, I'm going to bring some of this unstructured information into our go to market motion. And then I'm going to go say, okay, I now understand here are the like 5 or so speakers that talked about this subject matter. And I'm going to go run a campaign to my audience that has shown intent around this subject matter and just say, hey, looks like you couldn't have made it to our conference this year. If you want more information about these areas, from what we understand about you, here's obviously you probably aren't saying these words, but I'm articulating
Yeah.
it in a way that we would think about it as marketers. From what we understand about your intent on the things that you're interested in, here's 5 speakers that I think you would really love learning from. And then the marketing ops team turns around internally and says, here's the 5 speakers that I think are really good for this subject area. If I were you on the production side, I would go slice up like 30-second clips of all of these and then hit our database segment that is trying to learn more about this. That's like a post-event workflow that, like with AI today, is just not anywhere near as complicated as it used to be. And it doesn't even have to live in your CRM. Like that data point doesn't have to be there. It's just like a cool activation and productization of the thing that you just got done doing, hopefully with a
Mhm.
great degree of success. The other one, though, of course, is just like making sure that you celebrate the wins of that particular event around a specific area, right? If you have like super high ratings across the board, you want to make sure that your marketing team can go push that back out into the market and say, hey, this event just ended. We're doing it again next year. The overall ratings are in. Everybody thought that these speakers were the top rated. Go follow them. Basically, continue to lean in on your expert speakers because they're just going to be a champion for the fact that you pumped them up and you put them out into the world and you're celebrating them and they're going to celebrate you for doing that. And then all of a sudden everybody's winning together. And it's that whole better together comment
Yep.
that I was making before. That's all post-event analytics that marketing ops can help stitch or bring that across and be a bridge.
Yeah, to keep the momentum going. I think you also said something at the beginning of the conversation when we were talking about SEO and your speakers being these authority subject matter experts that have trust in market. And again, from a digital perspective, right? Like you said earlier, that the more places you're showing up with a unique point of view, that is something that speakers are naturally doing. It's going to raise the authority and in your expertise on any given subject. So I think where my mind also went is like I think what I love to say is that the speaker's journey is actually just starting after they walk off stage. And so
Yeah.
it's, what are the blogs that you're co-creating with the speakers? Are there other webinar or podcast opportunities where you're creating more content, going deeper on certain subjects that they touched on from stage? Like, what is actually mapping the speaker journey look like to help you continue to dial in a level of depth and nuance and sophistication in the content that your team is creating? And I think that the event team has an incredible role to play. And again, creating those bridges and opportunities. It just
And
feels like such a loss to me to have
totally.
an
Yeah.
amazing speaker come on stage that again has this expertise, this amazing network, and then it just completely drops off once the event's over. It's
Yeah.
just, oh,
Totally. I think like for all of the event planners out there, I want to be a little bit to the point on this. While your marketing operations team is capable of enabling you to like stitch these layers back and forth and be your thought partner and your support person and your strategic enabler, it is still your responsibility to really own your speaker's success metrics, right? And
Mm,
know it like a prop, know it like the back of your hand, and then work with your current speaker data set to champion them and to just to drive that motion forward. You should be able to answer those questions that we were talking about. Who's the best and what are they talking about? And how can I get them into more places? You should know that through and through, like all the way through the back of your hand. You don't have to be the one to figure out how to set up the infrastructure to know how to capture that information. You just have to have the right partner to help you do it. And then you are the owner of that thing. And I say that, I'm not saying that because I'm trying to put more work onto you as the person running this thing. It's that the marketing operations person, this is me protecting them, right? Because we get
mm,
asked to manage a lot around the infrastructure side of things, but that doesn't mean that we're going to know all of the answers and know how to connect. Like the fact that there's these, I'm never going to remember that Brian is an expert in these three core subject areas, right? And the person who's running the events is going to remember like probably 100 people and they're like really good at particular things. That should be your job, right? And you shouldn't be
mm.
turning to your marketing ops person to be like, oh, to answer every question about this stuff. You should be enabled and equipped with the tools to be able to do that and have a freaking awesome events program that you drive. And the way to get there is use the partnership with your technologist to help establish it. But try not to, I don't know, just don't ask the marketing ops person to be the expert at the data and your go-to-market motion there. Ask them to help enable you to do that.
I think that's a great parting piece of advice.
It's like
Amazing.
we're good team members, I promise. Just
Good team, good enablers. That's
good
amazing.
strategic enablers.
Amazing. Mike, this was awesome. Thanks for diving deep on this with us. I am curious if folks want to get in touch with you, learn more, be a part of your marketing ops community, where can folks learn more?
Yeah, for sure. I am Mike D. Rizzo, pretty much every little social thing that's out there. So you can find me on LinkedIn at /in/Mike D. Rizzo. Follow me, connect with me. As long as you're a marketer or events person or something, I generally will connect with you. And then you can absolutely find me in our community, marketingops.com. If you're interested in learning more about what it takes to be a marketing operations professional, we are on the fast track toward creating an industry vocational tech agnostic certification program to really define what it means to be an expert in marketing operations. And we would love for you to be, a part of that journey. So come hang out with us in Slack and the community broadly. Come to our events. You could judge us on whether we're good at our events or not. Happy to have the feedback.
Amazing. Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate this. Thanks everyone for joining.